And I'm Bill
Great.
Messenger. Hello. I've been doing Trade Act and Workforce Investment Act for about 8 years now. As she said, trying to muddle our way through the system, and we are here to support you on this grant.
Great.
So
Thank you so much.
One role that the State Labor Council took on in recent years was a lot of filing of Trade Act petitions in the state. So informally had been a resource over the years in helping union and non-union companies file for Trade Act benefits, with the logic being the more people that we can get in on Trade Act, the less people there are straining the Workforce Investment Act system and worker retraining dollars and everything else that's out there. In 2010, Bill and his previous partner got a Trade Act grant through the U.S. Department of Labor and built some real infrastructure in the state with how to pursue petitions and try and increase enrollment levels, and that was when I came on with the State Labor Council as well. So with that, we're trying to offer some of those services to you folks on this grant, but before we jump into anything, thought it would be worth it to just ask you guys how things are going, if there are any challenges or things you really want to have us address in our half hour today. We're happy to adjust for you.
So are there any, if there are no questions, let me just add a little bit to that. What we're able to bring to the table is we do partnership meetings across the state of Washington. We travel quite often. And when we do the partnership meetings, we can bring issues up and we can talk about what's hot, and we can bring you along with us when we go to the partnership meetings.
All right, so I guess we'll jump into a little bit of the legislative changes that you guys might be experiencing. If there isn't anything folks want to bring up first. So at the end of 2013, the Trade Act program, as you've likely heard, had the expiration of some of its parameters that had been a part of the 2011 iteration of the Trade Act program. Some of it you're never going to feel at all in your world, but some of it does impact things that we talked about in our initial conversation about companies being eligible for the program, as well as some of the enrollment challenges that workers might face.
This really will affect you. Not so much previous certifications, but as of the first of this year, the number of people enrolling may drastically decrease unless the legislature starts working together back in D.C. and morph it back to the way it was a little bit. I'm going to let Caitlin talk about some of the major changes that have gone on that are causing this to happen.
Yeah, so originally when Trade Act program was made, it was geared towards manufacturing sector workers. And then later on down the road, it was looked at and said, okay, now a lot of services, call centers, things of that nature are shifting overseas. And the eligibility parameters were expanded so that workers in service sector industry could access the program as well. And in addition to that, some expansions were made to how you could determine foreign competition, where previously it had to be directly connected to a specific trade agreement. It was opened up to all of foreign competition. What happened at the end of this year is that those two elements of the program reverted back to previous regulations. So now things like call centers, IT support, you know, some of these other things that we've been seeing many petitions for are no longer eligible to file petitions in the program.
In fact, no service at all. It has to be, it's went back to this manufacturing. So product has to be.
And so for you guys, a lot of the people that we've been sending your way saying might be a good connection from their existing skills transferring into the health IT field, were a lot of those people working in IT or customer service. And so we're foreseeing a little bit of challenges with the new petitions coming out with creating good pipelines to fields like health IT.
And when we wrote petitions, one of the biggest countries we were using as evidence of transferring skills and or manufacturing overseas was China. We're no longer able to use China, just Canada and Mexico, the NAFTA treaty people. So the Pacific Rim's kind of off the table unless legislation goes back to the way it was in 2011.
And that's certainly something that we're working on and trying to talk to as many people as we can about it to drum up support for Congress to act and bring it back to the expanded parameters that we've been functioning under. But for now, those are some of the limitations that we're going to be seeing. Are there questions about that before we move on to enrollment changes?
Oh, you guys are quite through. We've been cut off.
Okay, so the other thing that changed at the end of 2013 was enrollment had 26 weeks from the date of layoff in the 2011 program for workers to either be enrolled in a training program or have a waiver in place that they could will be entering training within a certain time period. Those weeks have now decreased back to 8 weeks from the date of layoff or 16 weeks from the date of certification. So going from 26 weeks to this 8 or 16 weeks really cuts back the time period that workers have to figure out their training plan or solidify a waiver in place at the WorkSource office to be able to enter into a training and retain their weekly benefit amount.
So people have to really get on the ball if they're going to use the full ride that TRADE Act will bring. And it's been my experience going from closure to closure that most people are in a kind of a state of shock. And the first thing that they really want to do is work. And so they go out and they spend a lot of time searching the job market when they really should be accessing parallel courses. But it takes a while for them to get used to the idea that they really are out of work and they really have to change their lifestyle. And so now they have even shorter period of time to make that decision. So a lot of it becomes a sell job by us and you as to get people in quicker and make up their mind quicker, or at least consider parallel courses while they're looking for work.
Yeah, so like we said earlier, that's new petitions. Right now we don't have anybody in our state that's in that time frame. So the folks that you're seeing still have that 26 weeks. But we anticipate that as you're moving forward, that you have TRADE Act participants coming into the college. They're going to be looking at a much quicker timeline from you guys to be filling out that training research packet or determining that the healthy workforce is really the route that they want to go. So any questions on that before we move into talking about how to access these workers? All right. Have we completely lost you?
No.
All right. Just want to make sure. All right. So one of the things that we wanted to bring up with you again is how to access workers. We know you're looking for folks who are either TRADE Act eligible or have their own pot of money because they've recently gone through layoffs. How are you finding them? What resources are out there?
Well, are you? Let's ask that question of the group. Are you having trouble accessing workers that are TRADE Act eligible?
This is Mary from Spokane, and yes and no, because we haven't had a lot of layoffs here. However, part of our program is trying to find dislocated workers. And so my peers that I work with here at WorkSource Spokane do have a caseload of dislocated workers.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And you've got 3 or 4 current petition sites, and there's 3 or 4 of them.
Exactly, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fair enough. I would imagine that King County and Snohomish County have a greater amount of TRADE Act affected people. Are you finding, you people who work in King, Snohomish, and Pierce, are you having trouble accessing TRADE Act affected people?
Hello?
Hi, Brandy.
Yep. This is Brandy. We just got our first TRADE Act student I think as of like last week. And I've only been in this navigator role the last couple months, so Trade Act is kind of newer to me. I was hoping you could maybe explain a little bit more as to the process of how students are or potential students are informed about if they qualify for Trade Act, and the student that came to me had already gotten that in place. So I'm not even really sure if a student does qualify for it, what's the best next step, or where can I direct them to get the application and such?
Okay, well, let's talk about it. In a perfect world, what's supposed to happen once a business is certified, the Employment Security Department of the state of Washington is supposed to notify them from a list received from the employer. Now, if we're involved in the petition, that generally happens, because most of the ones we have input in are union. We don't have the wherewithal to follow up so much on the non-union petitions we do, because we kind of lose touch. But what's supposed to happen is a letter's supposed to go out explaining the 10,000-foot view of what Trade Act is, and right on it, it's supposed to have the WorkSource and or meeting place that a person is supposed to attend their TAA session, which basically explains to them, you know, the basics of what they need to get started. But the message that comes from that is WorkSource, WorkSource, WorkSource. Start at your Trade Act counselor. And the reason we do that is because most of the people, there are more options besides retraining as a result of Trade Act, okay? There's an older worker wage subsidy, there's relocation, there's job search allowances too, and then we push training, if we have the chance, at the Trade Act session. Push it hard, because we've had a chance to look at the job market, and you see a lot of merry-go-rounds in this business, like at Boeing, for example. Boeing, every 7 years, every 5 years, we do a petition. People all sit by the phone and wait for Boeing to call them back. So we really push the training aspect of it if we get the chance. And most of your bigger petitions are, we do have a piece in. In other words, we get to go and present at the Trade Act. But if the message is being lost from the WorkSource Trade Act counselors and you, that is something we could work on too. We could bring you in the loop closer if we know that's happening. But right now we have no idea that's happening, that you're not in the loop. Does that make sense?
Hi, Bill. This is Margaret Murphy, and I just wanted to mention that we have quite a few comments in the chat box. And to see those comments, if you go up to if you put your cursor at the very top of your screen, you'll see a toolbar that drops down.
Oh, great.
Oh, my gosh.
And if you click on chat,
okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Then you'll be able to see the comments.
Finding few TA eligible in the area.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, there's not much that can be done about few, if there really are very few existing petitions in the area. Now, if there are existing petitions in the area and eligible workers, but there's a disconnect in how you folks as navigators can be getting in touch with those affected workers, there's a little bit more room of what we can do there. Like it's kind of roughly on the agenda, when a group gets laid off and is Trade Act eligible, typically there will be an on-site orientation at the WorkSource office. Sometimes when it's smaller, they'll have people come in just for individual, enrollment sessions. But when there are those layoff orientations, those are opportunities for you folks to get in touch with those workers, talk with the people at the WorkSource, and at least get some handouts or materials there so that you're hitting folks early when they're getting the information about training. The other way is, and what Bill mentioned, is that we're happy to help you get in touch with the folks at WorkSource. I know some of you have a close relationship. I think Spokane, you're on site sometimes at the WorkSource office, but others aren't necessarily having that same experience. We're happy to help get you in contact with the right people, have an informal meeting there where you can talk about your program and get in touch with the counselors that can then be directing those workers they're meeting with your way.
So can I, this is Mary from Spokane. Can I just add a quick comment?
Yeah, please.
So here at WorkSource Spokane, we have someone that pulls out of our skies where we know who's been on unemployment. And so they distribute that list of people that were laid off. And we actually call each person. It's divided between all the counselors here at WorkSource. So we know when they ran out of unemployment. So we call them and we say, hey, were you a displaced worker? And so they do that, and we do it like they're working on a list currently that they received probably about 2 weeks ago. So that's something that each navigator can go to WorkSource and and talk to them about that type of resource. But there's capability of getting that information from WorkSource.
Yeah. And I'd like to comment. I've been reading Matt's chat up in Whatcom County, and there are a lot of Boeing workers that would seem to fit right in your program that live in Whatcom County. And I'm surprised that you haven't been. There's a lot of SPIA workers, that's the engineering branch, and there's a lot of subcontractors. And I'm surprised that you haven't been in touch with, or none of them been in touch with you. There must be a disconnect between the WorkSource and that. We can also, I see you wrote that you're going to get in contact with WorkSource. We can also be of help with that if you want us to.
We had a round of partnership meetings around the state this last summer, and we'll be doing it again this summer, which offers some opportunity to get together with the players, meet with the people in the area that are working in workforce development. But in the meantime, we're happy to do that with you guys. We're on the road all the time, and if we start some one-on-one conversations with you via email, we could set up times that we're going to be in your area to get together and talk through some of the personal challenges you guys are facing.
You know, we also had word from Boeing not directly from Boeing, but that they're going to phase out their entire IT department slowly but surely. And it would seem like if we could make that connection between the two of you, it would be beneficial for all of us.
This is Shannon. I'm at Bellevue College, a navigator and a new hire as well. And so in prep for this meeting, I went on to our WorkSource website, and I have a question. I really appreciate all your comments about reaching out to the unemployed, but the new programs that we have, CA HIMSS and Data Analytics, which are certificate programs, when I went on the WorkSource website looking up eligible training providers and programs, our programs are not listed under your Career Builder WorkSource site. So at least for those two programs, my question is, what potentially would be the process to have those programs be approved? Is that something that the individual is an advocate for, or do we as a college take the lead and are responsible for being part of the eligible training providers for a program?
Yeah, that is through the college, but we can help get you in touch with the folks that you need to be in touch with for that.
Okay, great.
Is that something that you want to have a side conversation after this about?
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Okay, do you have our email or?
Yes, I have all that information. Thank you.
Great, yeah, because it's through Marina's office.
Yeah.
So we'll get you in touch with who you need to talk to about that for sure.
I'm surprised that isn't already done.
All right, so the other half of this, how do you reach those workers, is a lot of times folks are falling through the cracks because they don't know that either they could be filing a petition or maybe that they're included under an existing petition. And so when we talked the last round, we talked about some questions that you can have as kind of a desk aid for when you're meeting with people when they first come into your office. And they're up there under the prospective student support section. But asking those questions in your intake interview, did your job leave the United States? You know, what was the parameters of your layoff? Was a customer now purchasing from another country that they weren't when they had originally been purchasing from you. Some of those will throw up some indicators about if maybe we've got a petition on our hands.
And sometimes it's just a common product, such as the forest products industry, and that's, I'm talking generally. I'm talking anything from pulp and paper right down to lumber, or, I mean, generally speaking, we can prove foreign competition on any of the woods products, generally speaking. Sometimes it's they're not even thinking in the right direction. Sometimes it's competition, you know, cabinet making. If you import stuff from Canada, I mean, the thing to do is just to ask the right questions, and maybe we can file a petition for them and get them certified so they can do a longer training program. We all know WHEA money is kind of stretched, and you're not likely to get a longer training program through Workforce Investment Act anymore.
So obviously, it's a little bit more challenging now that we don't have the service sector, but there are still folks who, if you ask some of those questions right off the bat, people say, oh yeah, now all this stuff's coming in from China, we hear this happen all the time, and maybe they're already covered under a petition they didn't know, or you can send them our way and we'll be able to do some work with them to see if there's a potential petition.
So you can help us too by, you know, giving us leads on petitions so that we can qualify them to use your services.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about dealing with all the eligibility parameters yourself, but if you get some of those keywords and think, maybe there's some room for this, please do send them our way. So how many of you are feeling pretty familiar with what Trade Act eligible participants or even Workforce Investment Act participants are going to need from you to be able to do what they need to do at WorkSource?
Say that. I'm sorry. Say that again. What'd you just say? Ask.
Yeah. What is a student who's working through WorkSource going to need from you to be able to do enroll in the program? Is that the training research packet, training benefits application? Are you all comfortable with those processes?
Is anyone not comfortable with that?
No, very comfortable with it. I'll think about my reply before I say anything. Based on what you said, okay? Sorry.
Okay. Does anyone want a refresher on that, or everyone agreeing that you feel pretty good about it?
So we have a few more comments in the chat box from Brandy. We have an on-site representative from WorkSource that helps with TV apps and that.
I don't see anything from Brandy.
Maybe we're too far down.
So it's looking like people are feeling good about that.
Okay. Well, we won't go into that. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Brandy. So did you all get our updated version of the sort of Q&A form that we sent? Can we pull that up, Sam?
That should have been, yeah, I'll pull it up. It should have been in the email that you got this morning.
So for those who are new, this is the document we pulled together for the last time we met with you all, and then everything in red is what's changed since we last talked. And there's a section down there overviewing some of those legislative changes. So hopefully for folks who are new, some of these Q&A, if you read them, might get you pointed in the right direction. And we're happy to have some side conversations if you'd like to.
Great, thank you.
Are there questions that anyone had while we have the whole group?
I want to make a pitch for success stories when you have them. I know you will. If you have students that come in through Trade Act, use your program, and are successful in employment, document them. And if we can use them, it will help us in our efforts to sustain Trade Act as well.
Great. Does anyone have any success stories they'd like to share? I think we've got a quiet group today.
It is lunchtime. Yeah. Well,
okay.
You know, we're here for you, so give us a call, tell us you want to meet in person, we'll grab coffee, whatever you guys need, don't hesitate. We're happy to.
We can make introduction to WorkSources if you need. We're here. We know the people that work in the WorkSources, if that's a barrier.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
This was really helpful, and hopefully you'll be getting some phone calls after this. And let's see. One thing I wanted to ask is about, you had mentioned, Bill, actually, that you could actually bring some of us along with you to the partnership meeting.
Absolutely.
Could you explain a little bit more about what that might look like?
Well, one of the reasons we got the Trade Act grant when Caitlin came on was to advocate for it. And part of that advocation should be, the problem we've been having with Trade Act is showing people pathways. I mean, it seems like everything we advocate for becomes overloaded. Like for a while we were pushing people into CDLs, truck driving, you know, especially for the lower educated people. And we've had a tendency to push everybody into what we knew was hot at the time and flooding the market with it. So when we do go and talk to the local workforce development councils, which usually includes the Trade Act counselors and usually some Workforce Investment Act folks, maybe even a community college person or two, we like to take somebody along that can talk about their program. In other words, pathways for people that want to use Trade Act but really have no clue. Because as I told you before, we really have a psychological problem when people get out of losing a long-term job especially. And sometimes if we're all pulling in the same direction, you know, all saying the same things, okay, Trade Act counselors saying, hey, if you don't have an idea what you're doing, I just heard about this program that is through the community college system, and you know, it looks pretty good. You want to take a look at it? Here's the person to talk to, and so on and so forth. If we could get the Trade Act counselors talking about your program too, you would probably see a lot more people heading your way. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
And our next round of those partnership meetings formally will be again this summer. We'll be doing that, and some of you did come and present with us on the last round this last summer.
Great. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions for Caitlin and Bill?
No, I'm actually sending you both an email to ask my question. This is Mary from Spokane.
Great, we'll follow up.
All right, great, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks again. We really appreciate it.
Yes, same. Have a good one.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Okay. Adriana, did you have a question? Okay. Okay, was that making sense to everyone? Is it bringing up any issues that you'd like to talk about?
Well, so this is Mary from Spokane, and my question to Bill and Caitlin was about funding. So as you know, at Spokane Community College, we don't have enough credit hours for financial aid. And I don't know if that would still be a problem under the TAA funding. So that was my question to them. And I don't know that that's something that you can answer, Pam, but that was my question to them.
Okay, great. Okay, then I think we'll move on. Mary, would you like to start us off with talking about the WEA funding?
Sure. So I'm not sure that I know that and help me out, I forgot her name, the new student navigator at Bellevue, and I know that she wasn't there in December, so I didn't have the pleasure of meeting her. But I talked a little bit briefly about the WI program when I was there. So the WI program, we have a special grant through the WorkSource Development Council here in Spokane, and it's a council developed of WorkSource Spokane, Goodwill, and Career Path Services, and I actually work for Career Path Services. The program is designed for low-income adults, and there's two criteria. They can be a displaced worker, like I had mentioned to Bill and Caitlin, or they can be a low-income adult. The low-income adult, one of the eligibilities is if they're on food stamps, it's almost pretty sure we're going to enroll them in the program. The other dislocated worker is if we have a special program, and it's called NEGOJT, and if they're a dislocated worker and they've been dislocated for 20 weeks, we try to find them a job where we can pay for their additional training. So based on, it's case by case on each individual when we enroll them into the program, how we can financially help them. But just to give you a brief idea of some of the things we have provided them with, our goal is from the time we enroll them into the program until they exit the program is to become self-sufficient. We like to do that in a shorter amount of time. That way we can help more people. So like the people on my caseload is that I will help them with utility bills. As long as they're current, I do that. I also provide them with training. I have two students on my caseload and one on one of my peers that we paid for their KHEMS courses because, again, they're not financially aid approved because they're the credit hours. So we've paid for those for winter term, and we plan on paying for the additional two, plus their certifications from KHEMS. We plan on paying that fee as well. And so we do welding cert. I have a couple of clients that are enrolled in the welding program at SCC, and they have got their financial aid for the welding program, but the welding program does not cover for their certifications. So I'll be picking up their certifications for them to take their welding cert. And then a couple of the other things that, for example, I have two gentlemen that I have in the aviation program over here through Air Washington, and again, they have the financial aid or they're veterans and they have it covered, but they don't have the fee of the certifications covered. So, and then we do, we also can do some short-term training. So if they're looking at a short-term welding program that they can complete in 5 weeks, we can put them through that. And it bases each one of us practitioners here at WorkSource Spokane. We have a budget, and there's so many cases that we can take, and there's so much funding that we have in vocational ed, which is anything under $750. So that could be a test here or there, and they have individual training plan. So I have a couple folks that I've actually paid for their tuition for. One's in business management, and the other one is, oh my goodness, my mind went blank. But that's type of some of the things that we do. And we also offer, it's called 201 workshops here. And so once they're enrolled into the program, they're actively seeking jobs that we put them through a 5-day workshop, and that gives them their how to write a resume, how to do a cover letter, how to do a targeted resume, and it takes them for doing successful career searches, and it's a week long. It's from 8:30 to noon during that week. And so those are just some type of the things that we offer through the WIA program and what we can finance. Does anyone have any questions?
So I have a question, Mary. So, and I may have missed this, so I apologize if I did, but so have you been actually able to use this funding for any of the consortium programs?
Yeah, for the KHEMs. We have 3 students, yes. So like the HeM ones, what's the course? For the preparatory classes, there's 3 of them that Bellevue is offering fall term, and now we're offering those here.
Can you talk a little bit about how that process went, specifically for the CAHEMs?
Yeah, so because they were clients of mine, because they were on food stamps, both of them one has a networking background, so I was picked up through him entering the classrooms and getting additional information on who might qualify if they're on food stamps. And then the other one actually came into WorkSource, and he was working here as a volunteer with the IT downstairs. And he has a bachelor's degree in information management and was going to go on to do his master's, but when he can't afford it and he's taking care of a child full-time at home, and so he wanted to do something that was online. And so it was just a matter of me doing the voucher for it and getting it approved by management, and then he was able to. And it was a really quick process. And we also pay for their books.
That's great. So we have a few questions in the chat box. Esther wants to know, is this available elsewhere or just in Spokane?
If there are WIA programs at any of the other WorkSource, and I'd have to look, but at the other WorkSources over on the west side, I thought I said that wrong. On the west side, yes, it would be. And there are career path services I know that are in Tacoma, Puyallup. I can't think of all of them, but yes, I could get you that list, and Esther, I could get you that list and let you know who those contacts are.
Adriana wants to know if it's available for other health programs.
So, what does she mean by other health programs?
I don't know, Adriana, do you want to? So, like nursing or pharmacy.
It would be if they were approved for the WIA program, and then I think it's in the Tri-Cities, sorry, and if they were if they were eligible for the WIA program, yes. And again, it bases on individual practitioners and their budget.
Okay, so they would need to check with their local WorkSource.
That is correct.
Find that out. Okay.
And then Esther said we were told that because our certificates are self-supported, they are not eligible. What does she mean by self-supported?
Esther, can you explain that? So because Bellevue doesn't receive state funding for instruction, they're considered self-supported. And she's saying that they were told that they weren't able to get this type of funding because of that. Does that make sense to you?
It does. You mean Bellevue College doesn't get state funding?
I think it's just these programs.
You mean the WI program or your grant?
I'm sorry, the grant program. The certificates. Thanks, Esther.
I'm surprised. We don't receive funding from the state either. Ours are all through grants. Okay, so it's sounding like that
may not be the case, Esther. So, Mary, what I hear you saying is your programs are also self-supported and you were still able to get the funding.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Mary. That was really helpful. Okay, does anyone else have any challenges or best practices they'd like to talk about today?
Hi, this is Brandy. I had one more question for you, Mary. As far as WEA funding, we've had students that have applied and then been sent back here to check on other funding sources, and WEA has told them they had no more funding available. Is there a way to know if WEA has funding available or not, or is it kind of just until they get through the application process and decide how many people can be awarded if they know that information?
Yeah, and I would say it's going to depend on each WIA office, and then it's going to depend on each practitioner. So because I only have a caseload, I'm required to have 31 on my caseload because I only do half time at WorkSource Spokane. I have a budget, but I just met with my the county manager and my boss, and we went over my budget, and I'm over my budget in support services and in individual training and support and also vouchers. But I gave them a better idea of what I thought I would need, and they want to make sure that we have the money. So it all depends on each practitioner and that office that it's coming out of. Obviously, we can't help everyone, but it would really depend on that WEA person or that WEA management program that you're talking with.
Okay, it looks like we have a couple more chat messages from Esther. She says our certificate don't receive funding from the state. I think I already read that one. Matt says I'm experiencing some challenges with financial aid, but that's a whole nother can of worms.
So would Matt like to share what his challenges are?
Hi, this is Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, so we are offering our Health IT program, which is 52 credits, and as a standalone program or as a gateway into our computer networking program is fully eligible for financial aid. However, the curriculum of that program overlaps so much with our computer networking program that students who have the computer networking degree or are in the process of earning that degree can take just 3 additional classes to add the certificate.
All right.
However, since those classes are technically part of a different program and Pell Grant will only cover classes required for a student's primary program of study, any of those students who are in the computer networking program can't get Pell Grant funds to pay for those 3 additional classes to add the certificate. Now, if they're just starting out in computer networking, we can switch them to Health IT as their program intent, and when they complete that program, they can then transition into computer networking and have financial aid throughout without a hiccup. However, if a student already has 45 credits, then they're not allowed to change their primary program of study. So that's kind of an overview of the situation, but we do have at least one student this quarter who is a computer networking student enrolled in one of our health information technology courses and ended up being charged by financial aid for the tuition that was paid on his behalf for that class because it turns out that it wasn't eligible.
And that is correct. We do have the same issue here, and we have not yet gone in and said, you know, in the networking or the software, can you add these 3 classes into the curriculum? So financial aid will cover it, but we have the same challenge as you have, and that's why when I mentioned that there's no financial aid for it, it's the same reason why you don't have financial aid for it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
So we're looking at some maybe creative workarounds. We've talked about maybe even financing a cohort, like a summer cohort, because all 3 of our classes that would be necessary for the add-on will be offered during the summer, and they're all online, so it would be a really convenient time. And we've promoted it as a great opportunity for these computer networking students to add that certificate, but most of them are not able or willing to pay out of pocket. So, you know, we're looking into alternate funding sources and trying to be creative in our problem solving.
Right, and I did find that out. I do have another student that was doing the medical assistance, and she couldn't get it if she was under financial aid, but she was under a scholarship through the school, and the scholarship picked up the cost of the classes as well.
Sure.
So that might be something that you want to look into and ask, is that are they on a scholarship and not just on financial aid?
Yeah.
Which was not, I wasn't aware of that until the student enrolled.
Sure.
But yeah, we are trying to find additional, and that's why the 2 clients that I enrolled into the WIA program was the same situation. They wouldn't have been able to take the classes, but because they were eligible under the WIA program, that's why I was able to pick up and pay for their classes.
Yeah, it's a particular challenge with our population because 85% of our students rely on Pell Grant funds to pay tuition. So
yep. Yeah, it's a catch-22.
Anyhow, it looks like Brandy might have something to contribute to the conversation.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to share, we have a really kind of similar situation going on, it sounds like, where a lot of our second-year students that will be graduating this year have the opportunity to do a second associate that's 3 additional classes. So they're already getting an associate with a certificate built into it, so then they'd be getting 2 associates and a certificate by completing 3 additional classes. And pretty much our whole group is interested in doing that, except financial aid was saying either no, they would not fund that, or they were saying that student might have to petition for another degree, and that takes several months to get approved. So I went and met with them, and what they're in the process of doing for us now is they were, just for our program specifically, doing up sort of an agreement that the students will have to sign with a assigned education plan from us, that they can fund those additional 3 classes. So I'm not sure how they're structuring it on their end, but that was good news, as at least some hope for our students to be able to do that.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Brandy.
Yeah, so if you can get in touch with like your financial aid program manager or something, they might be able to do something similar.
Great. So if no one else has any other comments, I think we should probably move on. Thanks again, Mary.
Sure. Thanks for asking.
Okay, so under updates, so it came up in our meeting last month and then also in the PM meeting yesterday about the Student Services Database. And some folks had made comments about how they're having to track multiple things in different databases. And so the question was asked, would it be beneficial to you, or is it something that you would want the consortium to provide a more robust database than what they've provided before for student services. And Margaret, if you're still online, feel free to chime in here.
This is Adriana.
Yes.
So something
Hi,
to
Adriana.
consider is, I know for me, I am tracking on 4 or 5 different databases right now. So either it would make sense to have one where everything could go, or just have more clarification on exactly what the most important data elements are, so that we're not spending so much time tracking data. If we do kind of come up with a new database, it would be great if our current information, like through the Access or Excel, could somehow transfer, so that we weren't just spending a lot of time typing a bunch of information that we've already captured as well.
Okay, great. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Matt, it sounds like you're not wanting any more databases. Do you want to say anything more about that? Okay. Okay. So Matt and Beth are saying no, do not want to start with a new one. And I don't think the idea was to start with a brand new one. I was thinking it was to expand on what was provided before and provide some of the additional things that weren't included in there that people are now having to track in other places. Any other comments?
So this is Adriana. So it'd be great if some things like Access that we already have could track some of the other things, like if Matt could add a screen for the weekly outreach tracking, or a screen for the ISP meeting tracking, or something like that, just so it wasn't like so many separate databases. So that's something to consider too. If that could be developed more, I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, Khalid, user 13. Okay, Esther
is Mary. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Mary.
I just had a comment. So with the HeW database, is there issues that people are having with the database itself on getting reports that it's not working on that database? I just love the quietness.
Yeah, no one's wanting to respond to that question. So Adriana said the HeW will remain regardless. This is for other types of data tracking.
So basically the HeW with all the overview of the data for here's the list of all the students we have. I think when the PMs talked about it, they agreed that regardless, that is going to remain. So that's a separate thing that Bellevue needs. So I think we're talking more about the individual student meetings that we have and taking notes. We're talking about, weekly outreach, how we track that. We're talking about what's going to count for ISP to send to SPR as far as the whole list of Excel meetings that you have. I know for me, I track things like how many presentations I've done, how many meetings I've done, and all of that. So I think it's more the individual kind of student support side and not the big HeW. Okay, and that's exactly what I've been doing too. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that there wasn't something with the current database that's not working for folks. It's just that you are tracking additional information in your own spreadsheet. Okay, cool. Yeah, because part of we need that individual service plan for every student, which is supposed to list their barriers, their goals, and your plan for them. So really, that's why I've been using Access to track that, because you can put all those details in there. You could probably also do that in a spreadsheet, but it's not going to go in the HeW, it's going to go somewhere else. Okay. Great, thank you.
Thanks for clarifying, Adriana. So it looks like some people are also tracking things in spreadsheets. So kind of what I'm hearing is that some people think that may be helpful to have the additional fields added, and others are not so sure. So if you would like to provide any more information, or if you have any questions that you want to talk about offline, feel free to email me or Margaret or give me a call. Okay? Let's see. Okay, Matt, thank you. Okay, so the other things I just wanted to update you guys on is that the brochures, the consortium-wide brochures, are being delivered today. So we will be getting a stack of those out to each of your colleges to use. And I would also really like to get some feedback later on how you guys are using those. So if you're already tracking your outreach, I would love to know like how many you're using at veteran events, or how many you're using at WorkSource or on campus. And I had a question too. One of the things I'm really wanting to do is start sharing some employment resources on a regular basis. But I wanted some feedback on what you guys think might be the best way to do that. Right now I've just been kind of doing it piecemeal as I see things that I think might relate to certain colleges or certain navigators, and just emailing those individually. But I'd really like to have some kind of place where I could combine some of that information, so I'm making sure it gets to all the people who might benefit from it. So would you be interested in a newsletter, a weekly newsletter, or a closed LinkedIn group, or any other suggestions on that? So Adriana says an email newsletter would be great. Beth says a group on LinkedIn. Matt, newsletter. And yes, Beth, it would be a closed group on LinkedIn, just for the consortium. And Brandy says a newsletter. Okay, so maybe a combination of the two. Great. Okay, great. Thanks, you guys. Also, just to follow up real quickly on last time we had talked about free survey tools and what's out there besides SurveyMonkey. So I did a little research, and I did find some information about